got 3 flies that are not just necessarily Callibaetis. Look at these flies, I use all 3 of those patterns for Callibaetis, bluewing olives, and pale morning duns, and actually even gray drakes. So, you can just modify the size and the colors in there. So they basically cover all 3 stages of surface activity for mayflies. So the sparkle dun is the mature adult. Bug lights, the emerger, and the double-winged spinner is when they come back to lay eggs. So if I had one dry fly for mayfly hatches, it'd be the sparkle dun. Got more fish on sparkle duns than anything. And if you look at the flies there, the 2 yellow ones, one of them has tails. So how that sparkle dun started out, it actually started out by Francis Better's on the East Coast, where his fly was called the usual, and it was actually made out of snowshoe rabbit foot, and the wing and the tail was like that. And then there's 2 guys, Cossi and Stasi, from the East Coast. They wrote hatches, and their deal was they started the sparkle dun. So they went from the snowshoe rabbit to deer hair, but they had tails on them. So the next evolution was blue ribbon flies. Craig Matthews, they bought a carload of Zelon from DuPont or somebody, and they had to figure out some use for it, I think is how that worked. And they put that shuck on there rather than the tail, and they called it a sparkle dun. But all it is a compare dun with a Zelon shuck instead of a split tail. And actually I think it works better anyway. I hardly ever use the tails. I use a shuck for everything. It just, for some reason, just seems to work better. And when that thing sits in the water, it doesn't sit flat, it kind of sits on an angle. So basically the wing is out, but the body kind of hangs in the film like that.
Well, the shuck kind of pulls the back end down.
Yeah, unless you really grease the heck out of it, and then you can kind of get the float. But no matter what, it's a pretty amazing pattern for fish and dry flies, for mayflies. The key to that fly is in the deer hair. And the deer hair you need, if you look at that big one, it's kind of got some dark hair on it. And normally that wouldn't work, but it will work on that big one, because the hair you need has to be able to flare. And one way I kind of check if the hair is any good is if I take my, I don't know if can you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
If I can take my thumbnail and push in on that hair, and it does that, I know it's going to flare. Now that's the soft part of the hair. Now on this dark one, I use this for Callibaetis because I like the color. And I couldn't get away with that if it was a small fly, because up in this upper part, you see it doesn't do that because it's not hollow. But down here where I can use a 14, it'll still do that. So I can actually get away with that. So what you're basically looking for, when I look for hair for sparkle duns, especially tiny ones like 20s, you're looking for a light piece of hair, because when you get a light piece of hair, the tips are shorter, which means the dark tips are not hollow, they're solid. They won't flare, but the lighter part of the hair will flare. So this hair will flare clear up in the top. So I can tie 18s even with this piece of hair, where I can never do it with this piece, because when I get up in that part, that hair is hard and it won't flare. And you need that hair to compress and flare in order to get that wing to do that. So the hair is everything when it comes to that. Now, so I'm going to tie one here, and then we can tie one. So I start my thread about where I want the wing to be set, about 1/4 to 1/3 back, and I'm going to put a base of thread down, and then I'm going to come back to where I started. That keeps the hair from kind of rolling around. Normally I'd put some flex cement on there too, and this is a 14, so it's going to be fairly, you can actually see it. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of hair. One of the keys are you have to get all the fuzz out of this, and that's another thing to look for when you're buying hair. Some hair has a lot of underfur in it, and it's just a lot harder to clean.
Can you put it up by the camera?
Yeah. And the way to get it out, this is the greatest thing I've ever had for cleaning hair out. It's like a laser cut comb, and for some reason, man, it just really grabs that.
Wasatch sells
under-
the same.
Wasatch,
Oh.
this is a TMCO, yeah. And when you don't get it all out, if you spread it out and blow it, then you get the stuff on the back side, and then you can get the rest of it out. But it's important to do that because it won't stack right otherwise. So I'm going to stack it, and then when you take your hair out, you always want to have the tips going in the direction that you're going to want the hair to go originally, so you don't have to keep moving it. So I'm going to tie the wing with the tips going down. So my measurement for the wing is from the eye to about the barb, and that's pretty standard for all these, whether it's a blue wing olive or a Callibaetis. I'm going to make one wrap, and when I'm going to pull straight up now, you pull as hard as you can without breaking your thread, so there's no guarantees I'm not going to break my thread here. And then I'm going to keep tension on it, and I'm going to wrap one wrap behind the other, as tight as I can get it to compress those hair butts. A little trick that a friend of Gene and ours and mine taught us was what he'll do. He'll wrap it down real hard, and then you let it sit there for a second. And what it does, it compresses that hair, and then you back it off
That's the
a
slickest trick ever.
little ways, and the hair is compressed, and you don't get as much bulk. And I'll usually come in here and make a couple of cuts, and you want to get your hair up at about a 45-degree angle when you cut it. And then I'll wrap a little more, try to compress it, and then I'll cut the rest. And again, try not to cut your thread. And then you want to trim the rest of these butts as close as you can get them, because you want to eliminate as much bulk right in here as you can. And I'm going to wind that down, try to compress it a little more. And then we use Zelon for the shuck. And I've taken, see how it comes like in a long strand. Depending on how big the fly is, I'm not going to usually use a whole strand. I'll take some out, I don't want it real heavy. And then
So you're using about a quarter of a strand?
yeah, this is probably about a half, maybe on a 14. On a 18 it'd be a lot less. And what I want to do, I'm going to trim these ends square. What I'm going to do, I'm going to tie it in long. I'm going to make a couple wraps right here, loose wraps, and then I'm going to hold my thread tight, and I'm going to just pull it till it comes right to the end of those butts, so I don't have to cut it. Because I'm trying to fill up that gap where I whack those butts off. I'll wind it to the barb, and then I'm going to come underneath it again. I'm going to come up here and try to taper this front end out a little bit. If I got any wild ones, I'm going to get them out of there. And I'm going to come back to the shuck. And then the best dubbing I've found for doing these things is super fine. And when you're doing this, you don't want to use too much. It's better to have to add a little more than to put too much on and try to take it off, because synthetic stuff, once you twist it on there, it just gets jammed up and it's really hard to take it off. So you want a pretty thin body on this. So I just get it on there, and the nice thing about Superfine, it'll stay where you put it, and I'm just going to slide it down, make a wrap, tighten it up, and I'm just going to come forward, and I want a pretty thin body here. And I'm going to have a little, right where the transition between the butt, where the butts of the hair and the Zelon is, there's a little gap there, so I'm going to have to fill that in a little bit. I want to bring this dubbing almost up to the wing. Not quite. I'm going to have a little gap there. Now, the most important part of this, the wing, is originally you would just pull this thing back and then stack a bunch of thread in there, and about a week later you look in your box and all your wings are laid down. So I forget who came up with this, but it made a lot of sense. I'm gonna actually go through this wing at about quarter, so I'm gonna pull back about a third or a quarter of this wing. And I'm gonna put my thread in there, and I'm gonna pull it back toward the point of the hook. And I'm gonna go here, grab another bundle. Same thing, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna pull down and pull it back. Take a third one, pull it back. And then when I get to the front, get all the hair straightened out, I'm going to kind of jab my thumb in there. Then I'm going to come in here and stack a little bit of thread. So that way that wing is actually forced back in there. And now I'm going to finish standing it up with this dubbing. So I've got it up against the front of the wing, so now what I want to do, I'm going to come underneath and I'm going to fill that space in the back, which is going to fill in the gap I've got underneath too. And we'll pull that wing up and stack this dubbing up tight up in the front. I don't judge this one very well. I'm used to tying these in 20s and not 14s, so I'm a little off on my dubbing. And that's about it. Now at this point I'll cut this shuck to the length I want, which is about 3/4 of the length of the body. And I'm going to get this wing flared out where I want. Let's see. Now at this point, when I get this wing looking the way I want it, turn it kind of upside down. I'm going to take a big drop of flex cement and I'm going to put it in right at the base of that wing where it hits the dubbing. And that's going to lock that wing in there. So we're really going to hold it where it needs to be. That's it.